On Thanksgiving, I discovered an unexpected follower who changed everything in just 3 days. Tom stood staring at the 4 sad walls of his modest apartment as the subtle aroma of turkey and spices wafted in from the neighbors' homes. The vibrant colors and laughter he once celebrated during Thanksgiving now cast long shadows of loneliness over him. He remembered the cacophony of voices, his wife joking with Lily about who's the actual best cook, now replaced by hollow silence. 1 year since her passing, the weight of parenting alone and the upcoming holiday dragged him deeper into despair. Bills piled up, and the uncertainty loomed. The worst part being that Lily, full of energy and hope, didn't deserve a father drenched in grief. He should be preparing the pumpkin pie, or cranberries, something to capture the day's spirit. But all he felt was a desperate need to suppress the growing anxiety that gnawed at him. He was supposed to take pride in his role as her father, but the bitter taste of inadequacy consumed him. Could he give loving memories and a proper Thanksgiving feast without his wife's comforting presence? As Tom forced himself to get ready for the holiday, the doorbell rang, pulling him abruptly from his spiral of doubt. He flung the door open to find Evan, confident, dapper, and full of life. Tom's throat clenched, recognizing the stark contrast in their lives. Evan had climbed the social ladder, while Tom stayed back, entangled in grief and responsibilities. "Hey, man! Long time no see," Evan greeted enthusiastically, but the warmth in his voice stung. Tom's mind wrestled between a smile and the shame of his own static existence. As they traded small talk, memories of their school days surfaced. All the dreams they shared. Yet, with each reminiscence, Tom felt like the person he used to be drift further away from him. What had he achieved aside from the mundane? Before Tom could grasp his swirling thoughts, Evan introduced Maya, a bright-eyed student with an insatiable appetite for history. When their eyes locked, a flicker of the past sparked within Tom. He was reminded of himself at that age, eager to conquer the world with knowledge and ambition. As conversations flowed around unearthing hidden historical gems from their town, Tom sensed a rekindling fire within him. But anxiety quickly wrapped its tendrils around this flicker. What would his fellow educators think of him mentoring Maya, a student some considered underperforming? Doubts danced in his mind, gnawing at him. Was he setting them both up for failure? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With Thanksgiving upon them, every day felt heavier. He was never quite present. Lily's innocent joy was in sharp contrast to his spiraling concerns. The disparity cut him deep. Helping Maya would mean taking a risk under scrutiny, but standing by while an eager student floundered felt equally unbearable. Tom found himself at the precipice of a decision, teetering between pursuing the hints of connection that life was offering and the crushing weight of expectation. As the holiday loomed closer, the pressure became unbearable. Tom's muscles tensed as the night wore on, questions racing in his mind. Would he dare advocate for Maya, risking everything he had built, or succumb to the weight of fear, letting yet another opportunity slip away? Uncertainty wrapped around him like a fog, blurring the path forward. Each choice felt monumental, and the consequences just out of reach, waiting to reshape their lives without warning. As the Thanksgiving holiday dwindled to a close, Tom stood in his kitchen, hands trembling as they moved through the motions of cutting vegetables for a simple soup. The weight of days gone by echoed in the quiet of his home, a stark contrast to the chaos of memories fighting to surface. Memories that clashed with the present state of his life, 1 year since losing Lily, And still, he felt adrift. He glanced at the wall clock, time providing no solace. It was in these moments of mundane activity that the dark corners of his mind crept in. There was a part of him that wanted to retreat, to escape from the life he'd built in the ashes of grief. But then the image of Maya's bright eyes returned, piercing through the fog. She was counting on him. He couldn't let fear snuff out the spark she had. The next morning he woke with a resolve softened by doubt, weighed down by shadows of the past. Tom reached for the phone and dialed the school, an impulsive decision shocking even to himself. Once he heard the receptionist's cheerful voice, the crisp air filled with new possibilities. "Hi, this is Tom. I'd like to schedule a meeting with Maya's history teacher, please," he said, unsure if he would follow through with it. The echo of his words resonated in his mind as he pressed the phone to his ear, waiting for a response. Would this be the first step in leading Maya? Or would his insecurities unravel before him like a poorly woven tapestry? "Sure, Mr. Davis." The receptionist's cheerful tone was a stark contrast to the thoughts tumbling through his mind. What if he made it worse? What if he exposed his vulnerabilities instead of solidifying his role as a mentor? It was a risk. A heavy one. Later that week, Tom found himself sitting across from Mr. Johnson, Maya's history teacher. Tom was surprised to feel a shift in weight on his shoulders. In this small office adorned with historical posters, he sensed that he was not just a father or a bereaved husband anymore. This was his chance to reclaim a part of himself, a man of purpose, perhaps even a beacon for someone in need. "Tom, thank you for coming," Mr. Johnson began, folding his hands. The room was small and confined, much like Tom's fears. "I'm glad you're taking an interest in Maya." As they spoke, Tom felt emboldened. Slowly he began to voice his thoughts. He spoke of Maya's enthusiasm, how her curiosity reminded him of his youthful spirit before the weight of loss dulled his ambition. With each word, he peeled back layers of doubt that had accumulated, revealing a newfound determination. This was not merely about mentoring a student. It became a journey back to the person he wanted to be, someone who would not just be afraid of the shadows. "Look." Mr. Johnson leaned forward, genuine concern on his face. "I believe with the right guidance, she can excel. And I think you could be that guide." The words hit Tom with unexpected force, unleashing a mix of fear and excitement. The thought of being that guiding light for Maya filled him with both hope and challenge, a mission to undertake beyond the confines of his grief. But as he left the meeting, a chilling realization struck him. Would he be strong enough to face the challenges ahead? After months of battling his internal conflicts, could he genuinely provide the support Maya needed while reconciling his own inadequacies? As he walked back home, a sense of urgency filled his bones, demanding answers he wasn't ready to confront. The deeper he plunged into this commitment, the more he felt confronted by the prospect of change. It presented a personal reckoning he had avoided for far too long. He had taken the first step. But where would it lead? As the door to his apartment closed behind him, the echo of uncertainty clung to the stillness. Perhaps the real test was yet to come, and it would both challenge and awaken the man he thought was lost forever. It was time to face these demons. The moment of truth was approaching, and Tom had to decide what legacy he would leave for not just his daughter, but for himself. Tom awoke the next morning with a resolute sense of purpose, one that he hadn't felt in years. The sunlight streamed through his kitchen window, casting a warm glow that felt almost like a signal. He would not waste this opportunity with Maya. He would prepare not just to guide her, he would prepare himself. After settling on the day's agenda, he decided to take a walk in the nearby park, hoping the still air would help clear the storm of thoughts swirling in his mind. As he wandered along the beaten path, he brainstormed ways to engage more with Maya's education. wondering about the interests and subjects that might unlock her potential. His thoughts were interrupted when he noticed a small group of children gathered near a tree, their laughter bubbling up like the effervescent spring water bubbling from a brook. Watching them, he felt an uncharacteristic wave of envy. They had a freedom he longed for, an innocence untainted by grief or fear. Tom sat on a nearby bench, attempting to sort out his swirling emotions. He began to journal about his observations, a habit he had abandoned since Lily's passing. With each stroke of the pen, ideas unfolded. He wrote about ways to encourage Maya's curiosity, not only about history, but in all aspects of life. The act of writing felt cathartic, transforming the heavy weight of sorrow into something tangible. As he turned the page, a reflection pierced through his thoughts. What if he involved himself in community activities or mentor programs at the school? A vision of leading a workshop on historic figures flickered in his mind. Could this be a way to not only aid Maya, but also resurrect a part of himself that had lain dormant for too long? However, as he contemplated this new direction, another thought seeped into his consciousness, gnawing away at his burgeoning enthusiasm. What if he failed? What if the children lost interest or laughed at him? The ghosts of self-doubt lurked, whispering in his ear, urging him to retreat into the safety of solitude. Snapping his notebook shut, Tom inhaled deeply, forcing the phantoms away. He needed to confront these fears rather than let them govern his choices. Back at home, Tom committed to researching community involvement opportunities relevant to his daughter's interests. He discovered a local educational initiative that focused on history through interactive storytelling. Suddenly, ideas flooded his mind. What if he could tell stories from various historical perspectives, engaging the children in discussions that would spark their interest? This initiative, although unfamiliar, ignited a sense of excitement in him. He had buried his passion for history after losing Lily. Perhaps it was time to unearth it. The thought of crafting narratives that could inspire young minds transformed self-doubt into determination. However, the looming shadow of his responsibilities to Maya clouded this clarity. Could he balance his involvement with work while managing his own emotional spillage? The apprehension lingered, whispering that maybe this was a stretch too far. Just then, Maya burst through the door, her bright demeanor palpable. As she recounted her day at school, enthusiasm illuminating her words, Tom felt an overwhelming surge of protective affection reignite within him. "Dad, what if we do a project together? Like a family history story?" she proposed, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Tom faltered for a moment, a momentary flash of panic rippling through him. His hidden struggles fought for dominance. But the potential in her suggestion stirred something deep within. "I'd love that, Maya," he finally replied, a hint of certainty coating his voice. It felt symbolic, an opportunity to build something new, to weave the fabric of a shared journey. Bonding over history could become a stepping stone toward bridging the chasm grief had created in their relationship. As they worked on brainstorming and planning together, Tom felt as though a dormant seed had been watered, beginning to sprout amidst the chaos of unresolved feelings. Yet, beneath this layer of newfound hope, lingering doubts burned fiercely. What if this venture failed? What if they unearthed more wounds than healing? Yet, the horizon shimmered with the possibility of change, beckoning him to take another leap of faith. As they turned toward the future, the question loomed larger than ever. Could he truly redefine himself as a father and guide? Or would old fears prevent him from moving forward? The answer felt painfully close, yet frighteningly out of reach, sending tremors of urgency through his being. The struggle to build this new legacy loomed just ahead, and Tom knew the first encounter with the world outside of grief was on the very horizon. As the week unfolded, Tom found himself at a crossroads between the present and the looming shadows of his past. Each morning began with a flicker of hope, a reminder of the journey he was undertaking with Maya. However, as dusk fell, anxieties crept back, wrapping around his thoughts like a tightly wound vine. He focused on planning the history project, but self-doubt clawed at the edges of his resolve. The first step was to carve out time. The very idea of balancing work, his project with Maya, and the emotional work required to confront his grief was draining. Yet there was a fire ignited within him that urged him to try. He meticulously scheduled evenings for their collaboration, often sacrificing personal time for reflection. He realized that addressing his own pain was just as important as supporting Maya. One late evening, as he prepared a light dinner, the aroma of pasta wafted through the air, stirring memories of shared meals with Lily. A bittersweet reminder of joy and emptiness intertwined. Two images played in his mind: the laughter around the dinner table and the cold silence that followed her passing. Confronted with these swirling emotions, Tom felt he was teetering on the brink of something significant. "Tomorrow we embark on our journey," he murmured to himself, finally feeling a sense of clarity about their project. Driving his purpose deeper, he decided to add personal elements to their historical narrative, integrating stories from his own life alongside historical events. This would serve as a bridge, linking his daughter's curiosity to his heart. That night, in bed, his thoughts spiraled into anxiety about failing. Could he genuinely illuminate Maya's passion for learning? What if his memories overwhelmed her with sadness rather than joy? He woke up in the middle of the night, pen in hand, jotting down every doubt. The sharp whispers urging retreat. With solemn determination, he also penned ideas that contradicted those fears. Moments that defined who he was as a father. Possibilities bubbling in his gut, waiting to be explored. By morning, Tom felt lighter. He chose to see this project as a chance to teach Maya about resilience amid storytelling, an ancient art form steeped in emotion, his own craft reborn. As they began laying the groundwork together, discussing key themes and potential anecdotes, both personal and historical, Tom noticed a shift in his approach. The crutches of self-doubt began to give way, replaced by a tenacious drive to prove not only to Maya, but to himself that he could rise above his fears. "Dad, what about when you went to that history conference? You said it was like being in a different world." Maya exclaimed, her eyes lighting up with youthful enthusiasm. That burst of excitement was a lifeline for Tom. It was their history project, yes, but in it lived fragments of both their stories and shared aspirations. He felt warmth surging through him. For the first time in years, he entertained the idea that maybe he had something of value to contribute, not just as a father, but as a storyteller. Days passed, and their project blossomed. Yet Tom's internal landscape was far from serene. Each night, as they pieced together history and their narrative, questions lurked in the recesses of his mind. How would they present this final piece? Would it resonate with others? And what if revisiting his past haunted him more than it healed him? Just as Tom began to feel momentum, a chance encounter threatened to unravel the threads they had woven. He bumped into a familiar face while running errands. Olivia, an old colleague from his teaching days. The memories of lost opportunities and unfulfilled ambitions swirled around him as she approached. "Tom, it's been ages. How have you been?" Her voice was warm, but her gaze held a sharp, questioning edge that struck a chord in him. He could either retreat into the comfortable shadows of isolation, or step forth, confronting his past. The air crackled with tension. The moment hung suspended in time, a pivot point that could redefine everything. Before he could catch himself, a stray thought punctured through. What if she was the catalyst that could finally push him into the light? "How about you join us for dinner? I'd love some feedback on a project Maya and I are working on." The words tumbled out before Tom had time to second-guess himself, and he braced for her reaction, uncertainty gnawing at him. Could this outreach solidify his commitment to change? or would it lead him back into the depths of self-doubt and shame? The answer felt agonizingly close but tantalizingly out of reach. Tom felt a tide of vulnerability overwhelm him as Olivia considered his invitation. He was acutely aware of the fragility of this moment. The impulsive words had slipped out, and now the weight of potential consequences settled on his shoulders. She glanced around, assessing the atmosphere before finally nodding with a tentative smile. "Sure, I'd love to," she replied, her enthusiasm genuine but laced with a hint of surprise. Relief washed over Tom, but alongside it came a rush of questions. Was inviting Olivia a step toward personal reinvention, or merely a regression into old patterns? The evening unfolded in an odd collage of past and present. Maya was initially apprehensive but quickly warmed to Olivia, showering her with questions about her own limited history in the world of education. It was insightful. The expert perspective Olivia proffered fed into Tom's own pursuit to unearth ideas, and for a time, the family dynamic felt buoyant. They laughed, sharing stories that bridged their disparate lives together. However, beneath the surface of pleasantries, Tom's mind twisted restlessly. The conversation edged into areas of ambition, illuminating unfulfilled dreams. Olivia mentioned her recent ventures, each recounted achievement painfully juxtaposed against his own stalled aspirations. He sensed a gnawing dissatisfaction within himself. Why hadn't he pursued opportunities more aggressively? The stark contrast forced him to confront self-imposed limitations he'd danced around for too long. "Tom, you have so many stories that need to be shared," Olivia encouraged midway through dinner. "You've always had a knack for engaging your audience. You should really consider teaching again, maybe even running workshops about engaging storytelling." Her words struck him with the force of unexpected clarity. The possibility felt as foreign as it did enticing. Could he face a classroom again, unleashing his thoughts while simultaneously encouraging others? The idea brewed temptation but also reeked of anxiety. After dinner, as Olivia and Maya dove into a heated discussion about historical figures, Tom excused himself to the kitchen, largely to gather thoughts and to breathe. The clutter of emotions became a cacophony. He had invited this chance to reconnect, but had neglected to address what it cost him personally. He felt like both a participant in the moment and a detached observer, straddling both worlds uncomfortably. Back in the living room, he overheard Maya chastising Olivia with an impromptu lesson on the importance of context in stories and historical events. He couldn't help but smile. In that moment, he saw a spark of himself in her. Perhaps all these years, he had been planting seeds in her mind, nurturing her curiosity. But amidst this realization, regret began to gnaw at him. What if Maya never had a father who fully embraced his potential? What if she only had a parent trapped in a past that bled into the present? His spirit flickered unsteadily. Each passing second felt like a ticking clock, a premonition of missed opportunities. As the evening wore on, Olivia turned back to him, a knowing glint in her eye. "Tom, I'll be honest. I see a spark in your work with Maya. What's stopping you from taking it further? You don't have to be that solitary figure you were before." The truth stirred deep within him, profound yet painful. A rush of emotions threatened to spill over. Could he really move beyond the tight grip of his history, shifting from the father's pursuit of his daughter's passions to embracing his own tentative steps toward liberation? Tom's breathing picked up. He realized this compelling intertwining of lives offered a rare chance for acceptance, not just of Maya's needs, but his own too. He didn't have to remain chained to his fears. Maybe it's time to start teaching again, he found himself saying, the words echoing with a newfound assurance. Maybe we can do it together. Within him something ignited, a slow burn that stirred and stretched. This journey was arduous, but the prospect of unshackling his potential became vivid against the backdrop of their shared dialogue. As the night drew to a close, Tom understood he had nudged the door open a crack to his own dreams while reigniting Maya's journey. There was still a chasm to cross, but now it felt less daunting. He sensed resilience knitting into his resolve. As Olivia departed, she promised to check in about the potential workshop. And as he closed the door behind her, he felt the exhilarating thrum of change. Yet murky questions still loomed. What sacrifices lay ahead? And could he sustain this momentum when the darkness threatened to swallow him whole once more? He stood at that precipice, ready to step forward into the unknown, but haunted by the whisper that the hardest battles were yet to come. What awaited him as he pulled closer to his ambitions? A reckoning, perhaps, that would either define or destroy the man he had become. Tom woke the next morning with a sense of restless anticipation buzzing beneath his skin. The air was crisp, and he could hear the faint rustle of leaves outside. Sunlight streamed through the windows, casting warm patterns across the kitchen table where he had taken to planning his next steps. A large coffee mug sat before him, slowly cooling, forgotten amid his thoughts. His mind whirled around Olivia's suggestion of teaching again. The prospect was both thrilling and terrifying. What if he failed? What if he stumbled over his words, or worse? What if he lost the room's attention? He shook his head, pushing the doubts aside. Maybe he wasn't destined to ignite flames of inspiration. But the thought of nurturing curiosity, of even just one student seeing the world differently, it ignited something deep within him, a longing that had lain dormant too long. The memory of Maya's fierce interrogation of Olivia's knowledge flickered in his mind. She had been alive with questions. Did Tom even possess that kind of energy anymore? In the days following Olivia's visit, he began to outline what a workshop might entail. He jotted down all the stories he'd forgotten about, experiences long tucked away that still held meaning. Each entry sparked new threads of enthusiasm, leaving him exhilarated yet aghast at the implications. This was what he once craved, the chance to engage, to reveal the world in a different light. Yet as he descended further into this new world of possibilities, another force wrestled for his attention. The specter of past failures that loomed at the edges of his consciousness. Those memories where he had fallen short echoed like a relentless drumbeat, urging him to retreat. What if he stumbled again? Misguided lessons had left students unengaged before. He could not afford to repeat that mistake. With a sigh, he took a sip from his now cold coffee. Maya bounded into the room, her energy infectious. "Dad, can we do that history project today?" she asked, anticipation bright in her eyes. "Of course. What do you have in mind?" he replied, surprising himself with a newfound eagerness. As they worked together, narrating stories from the past and connecting them to present-day implications, he began to see glimmers of truth. Shared enthusiasm flowed between them as they danced around ideas. It was on this bedrock of collaboration that he could build his workshop. Not based on rote lessons, but stories, narratives woven to engage minds, hearts, and souls. Yet as they drafted their project, the pressure of commitment began to constrict around Tom again. What if he opened his workshop only to find empty seats, or worse, disinterested faces? He couldn't shake the anxiety that hummed beneath his resolve. That evening he took a walk to clear his head, wrestling with his thoughts. Each turn illuminated new avenues filled with inspiration as well as anxiety. If he were to embrace teaching again, what costs would pan out? He thought back to conversations with Olivia, the truth of connecting with students and the power to change lives. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue across the sky, Tom was confronted by a realization. The only way to find momentum would be through authenticity, to embrace the totality of his experiences, both failures and successes. This was not about him alone. It was an opportunity to foster exploration for Maya and for others. Determined, he resolved to organize an informal gathering at their home, inviting co-workers, friends, and family, whoever might be interested in storytelling. It was a small step, but one that signified a direction forward, a deepening of purpose. In the final moments of the night, he sat down at the table and began to draft an email invitation. Just as he clicked send, a notification lit up his phone, a message from Olivia. Her words hinted at curiosity and anticipation about the workshop, yet also contained uncertainty. Could he achieve this vision, or would fear dictate the outcome? The conflict within him surged, threatening to spill over again. Was he ready to step into this identity, to become a mentor? Just as he was about to contemplate further, another notification came through, from an unknown number. Are you ready to share your story with the world? The time has come. Something about the message struck him as both ominous and exhilarating. Who had sent this? What awaited him next? Another layer of challenge or the chance to fully realize his ambitions. He exhaled, feeling again that exhilarating thrum of change ripple through him. But the tension brewed. There was yet more to unfold, paving the path with uncertainty, just when he thought he had a grasp on his direction. What unforeseen adversities were looming, waiting to pounce on this fragile moment of newfound resolve? Tom spent the next few days oscillating between excitement and dread. Each dawn brought a surge of energy, igniting his ambition to not just teach, but to step into the role of mentor he had long coveted. However, beneath the surface, his fears brewed quietly, gnawing at the fringes of his resolve. As he prepared to host the gathering, memories of past failures crept into his mind uninvited, casting long shadows over his ambitions. He polished his notes for the workshop, but increasingly felt like a masquerader, hiding behind an artifice of confidence. What if he stumbled over a single word? What if his anecdotes fell flat? The weight of expectation pressed on him, both from within and from the friends he was hoping would show up. Would they recognize his inadequacies? Or worse, dismiss him entirely? The day before the event, determination pushed him to work on his delivery. He stood in front of the mirror, rehearsing the stories he intended to share. While his reflection captured the outward facade, his inner dialogue was rife with criticism. You're not good enough. You're a relic of your former self. It spiraled until he stopped, addressing himself directly. Enough. His resolve renewed, Tom took a deep breath and turned his attention to the positive ramifications. It wasn't about perfection. It was about connection. Each story he shared had the potential to resonate, to stir something meaningful in someone else. That singular thought propelled him forward, overshadowing the fear that all but threatened to swallow him whole. On the evening of the gathering, familiar faces filled his living room, laughter bubbling up like an uncorked bottle of champagne. He had expected a few stragglers to trickle in, but felt overwhelmed by the turnout. It was exhilarating, yet nerve-wracking at once. As the mingling continued, conversation flowed easily. His dread diminished, subsumed by the warmth of companionship. This was the human connection he craved. As the evening progressed, Tom guided everyone toward the topic of storytelling, inviting each person to share a snippet about their life experiences. The first story from his colleague Amanda struck a chord. She recounted an internal struggle to find her passion again after being laid off, her struggles echoing sweetly of what he also felt. Each contribution added layers of understanding and empathy that transcended mere anecdotes. When it was his turn, Tom felt a rush of confidence. As he began his tale, he noticed their eyes widening, brows lifting in curiosity. He projected sincerity and vulnerability, weaving in the threads of his journey, including failures, triumphs, and ultimately, the lessons learned through the valleys of his despair. It was liberating, infused with authenticity. But just as he reached a pivotal moment, the doorbell rang, interrupting the atmosphere. A deep breath and collective silence hung in the air, casting a curious glance at one another before he walked over to open the door. Standing on the threshold was a figure he didn't recognize. A young man with a camera slung around his neck, standing amid a shimmering array of twinkling lights against the evening sky. "Sorry to intrude," the young man said, a hint of shyness evident in his demeanor. "I heard you were sharing stories here tonight." Tom's heart raced. How did he find out about this? The uncertainty of the young man's intentions was palpable. Can I share my story too?" he continued, eyes flickering with a mix of eagerness and apprehension. In that instant, Tom's chest tightened, a rush of adrenaline coursing through him. Before he could respond, the young man stepped forward. It was both an unexpected challenge and an opportunity. Could his gathering accommodate another voice, especially one that felt so raw, yet invigorating? Caught between welcoming this intruder and the anxiety of the event spiraling out of control, Tom felt a decision loom large over him. Would he allow this stranger to join their circle, amplifying what had been a carefully orchestrated narrative? The juxtaposition of anticipation and uncertainty danced in the air as he replied slowly, "Of course, we'd love to hear your story." Little did he know, that moment would herald changes he could never have anticipated. Tom motioned for the young man to join the circle, a hesitant warmth blossoming in his chest. As the newcomer settled into the small clearing created by his friends, Tom grappled with the mixed sensations enveloping him. Who was this kid, and what was he about to bring into their dynamic? For a moment, he felt on the verge of losing control. His workshop so meticulously crafted reduced to a fragile tapestry of shared narratives. The young man took a breath, collecting his thoughts. "My name is Ryan," he began, glancing around at the attentive faces. "I've always struggled to find my place. Growing up, I was the quiet kid who loved to observe but never felt important enough to contribute." Tom felt a shiver of recognition wash over him. He had once been that same quiet observer, harboring ambitions that seemed insurmountable. Ryan's voice trembled with vulnerability, and everyone fell into silence, eager to listen. 3 days ago, I decided to take a step. I didn't know where it would lead, but I bought this camera. He gestured to it, and I started documenting my life, but not just the highlights. I wanted to reflect on everything, the struggles, the dark corners of my mind. Each word he spoke was met with an intensity that wrapped around Tom's intuition tightly. This was more than just a presentation. It was a reckoning, an unveiling of shared humanity in ways that Tom had not anticipated. The dialogue that followed was raw, each story layering on another in a rich braid of experience. As Ryan described the loneliness of his journey, Tom could sense the release that began to ripple through the group. It wasn't just about individual stories anymore. They were building a collective tapestry woven through their shared vulnerabilities. With each confession, Tom felt the weight of his own insecurities lift ever so slightly. It became clearer that his role wasn't merely as a conveyor of knowledge, but as a nurturer of connection, where each tale mattered, no matter how humble. He was struck by the realization that Ryan's presence echoed something deeper within him, the value of authenticity over perfection. As the gathering continued, Tom interjected now and then, weaving his own reflections around Ryan's narrative. They were creating an open dialogue, breaking through barriers he had never contemplated. For the first time, Tom felt the exhilaration of true mentorship, not from a distance of superiority, but from a place of genuine relatability. However, as the gathering began to wind down, Tom felt the pressure of a fateful question take root. His mind raced with uncertainty. What did this mean for him? Did he need to confront the unspoken fears he'd been harboring? As laughter faded and people expressed gratitude for the unexpected evening, Tom noticed Ryan lingering on the sideline, camera still in hand. The impromptu storyteller looked nervous, glancing about as though gauging how the tank of warmth had shifted into something deeper. "Tom?" Ryan said quietly, stepping a little closer. "I feel like I'm finally understood for the first time. You helped me find that. But what do you think is next for you?" It was a question that cut to the core of Tom's journey. The essence of mentorship, he realized, was entwined with his own growth. How could he possibly guide someone else when it felt like he had so far to go himself? The night's new glow began to fade, and Tom faced Ryan, the weight of his uncertainty colliding with the desire to embrace this new challenge. Quotes and sayings swirled in his mind, yet one remained prominent. It was through growth that he could inspire growth. With a firm nod, he replied, "I have to confront what's been holding me back. I think it's time for me to take that next step, whatever it may look like." As he gathered his notes, wondering what this step entailed, a tingle of anticipation ran through him. Change was brewing, and Tom understood deeply now. The path to mentorship was also very much about personal discovery, and as he looked over at Ryan's eager gaze, a thought cracked through him like dawn breaking over the horizon. What if this moment was only the beginning of something much bigger? He felt compelled to discover just how far this exploration of authenticity would take him. But in that uncertainty, one thing became crystal clear. The next chapter of his life was waiting on the other side, and it might just begin with this newfound partnership. As they exchanged reflective smiles, the question that lingered was unmistakable. What would happen when vision and purpose converged? The crisp autumn air was laced with the earthy scent of fallen leaves, and Tom felt invigorated by the chill. As Thanksgiving approached, he anticipated the familiar routines of gratitude and reflection that accompanied the holiday. But this year, a palpable shift loomed heavy over him, charging the air with purpose. He found himself replaying Ryan's words, each echo serving as a subtle nudge toward the uncertainty that awaited him. What would happen when he confronted his own limitations? Tom felt a gnawing tension between his past timidity and the emerging desires for authenticity. Determined to make this season of gratitude meaningful, he resolved to embrace vulnerability, often the very antithesis of his previous holiday gatherings. Days passed, and with the Thanksgiving dinner approaching, Tom decided to involve Ryan in selecting some photo prompts for a collaborative project. They would explore pieces of their lives through photography, encouraging each other to capture their personal truths. As they worked together, Ryan's enthusiasm bolstered Tom's own hesitance, and soon the clicks of the camera became a vehicle for their thoughts. Finding himself in the genuine company of a peer was an invigorating contrast to the solitary times he'd relied on. Each session they shared chipped away at the walls he'd built, igniting something inside him that had long been dormant. A recognition of shared struggles and triumphs through art. It was through this budding partnership that Tom began to see the potential for change in the web of his own fears. Ryan wasn't just a protege, he was a catalyst. Thanksgiving Day arrived, and Tom prepared for the gathering with fresh resolve. He invited Ryan to join, eager to embrace the flavors of open dialogue and shared experiences. As family and friends assembled around the table, Tom maintained a tight focus, using his role as a host to cultivate an atmosphere of uncanny warmth. During the meal, he found himself engaging with his loved ones in ways he'd avoided in the past. Questions flowed naturally, pushing the boundaries of typical small talk. Instead of merely echoing platitudes about gratitude, he prompted deeper connections, asking about dreams and challenges faced over the past year. In conversation, Ryan impressed everyone with his raw insights, from photographing his vulnerabilities to revealing emotional truths hidden beneath the surface. Observing Ryan's candid expressions illuminated a profound path for Tom. It was an instance where someone else's courage made a ripple through the atmosphere, inspiring Tom to exhibit the same fearlessness. As dessert was served, Tom stood up, hesitating but compelled by the moment to add his voice to the tapestry woven throughout the evening. He spoke candidly about his fears, relating to his struggle for connection, and shared how Ryan's influence had shown him the beauty of embracing one's own story. The room quieted, and Tom's honesty drew heartfelt reactions, eyes glistening with understanding. He'd begun to foster a new depth in relationships, a space where open-hearted sharing flourished. It felt liberating to not just talk about personal growth, but to be the very embodiment of it amid those he loved most. Afterward, as guests made their way home, Ryan turned to Tom, an eagerness in his eyes that mirrored the craving for discovery that surged within him. "You were amazing today. It's like people truly saw you," Ryan remarked, a grin stretching across his face. A flicker of inspiration ignited within Tom. He realized just how healing vulnerability could be. And then came a lingering thought. Was he ready to contemplate what this evolution meant in terms of his work? How could he harness this newfound audacity? The world of photography and storytelling wasn't just a mere hobby anymore. It had morphed into a potential pathway for growth for both of them. Tom nodded, realizing that they were embarking on a journey beyond mere snapshots. They were capturing moments of transformation, and he felt ready to dive deeper, not just as a mentor, but as a co-creator. What would happen when they both ventured into the art of storytelling and authenticity together? The road ahead was uncharted but brimming with promise. The next stage awaited. The real question was, how would Tom navigate this evolving partnership into something transformative? As December unfolded, Tom found himself rejuvenated, a buoyancy replacing the heaviness of the past. The Thanksgiving gathering had marked a turning point. He felt liberated by the candidness he had shared around the dinner table, a break from years of stifled emotions. The act of vulnerability was not just cathartic. It had reignited his passion for connection and storytelling. With each passing day, conversations with Ryan became a staple in his routine. They collaborated and brainstormed innovative concepts for storytelling workshops. Tom had shifted from merely repackaging knowledge to creating an environment where self-expression intermingled with historical narratives. This was not just about guiding others. It was about rediscovering his own voice in the process. One brisk afternoon, as they sat in Tom's living room strewn with notes and photos, an idea sparked. "What if we host a community showcase?" Ryan suggested, excitement bubbling in his voice. "We could present our stories along with others from the workshop, show the impact and depth of our experiences. It could be a way to bring in more voices." The proposition resonated with Tom. He felt the magnetic pull of purpose drawing him deeper into a realm he had long abandoned. It was about building a bridge, combating isolation, and showcasing the power of shared narratives. They began planning diligently, drafting applications, securing a community space, and reaching out to potential participants. An anticipatory thrill coursed through Tom. This was not merely an initiative. It was the embodiment of a mission to foster connection and healing. As the day of the event approached, anxiety twisted in his stomach. What if the turnout was dismal? What if they failed to inspire anyone? However, as he reminded himself time and again, this endeavor was not about accolades. It was about authenticity. He resolved to focus on the journey rather than the outcome, emphasizing the importance of every voice contributing to the collective story. On the day of the showcase, Tom stood backstage, heart racing, as he watched the community fill the performance space. The energy was electric, a spirited ambiance cloaked in anticipation. He exchanged a glance with Ryan, who stood just a few feet away, visibly buzzing with excitement and nerves. As they took the stage, Tom took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his past lift with every word he spoke. He introduced not only the workshop they had developed, but also the stories woven through their journeys. His own transformation echoing around the room while celebrating everyone's contributions. The stories began flowing, one after another. Genuine, beautiful reflections drawn from the depths of life experiences. Each shared moment carved out a space of recognition and understanding that resonated with everyone present. As the event drew to a close, the audience erupted in applause, an overwhelming swell of appreciation reaching Tom. It dawned on him that the measure of success didn't lie in applause alone, but in the bonds they had fostered, the connections forged through shared experiences. Ryan approached him afterward, eyes gleaming with pride. "We did it, Tom. They resonated with us. This is just the beginning." Tom's heart swelled with a mixture of gratitude and fulfillment. He recognized the transformation not just within himself, but within the community they had begun to cultivate. "I know," he replied, voice steady. "This is the first step. We're building something meaningful here." In that moment, he understood that personal growth mirrored community building, that his own journey of rediscovery would continue alongside empowering others. The tides of fear were still present, but they began to shift, replaced by waves of resilience, curiosity, and shared purpose. As he stepped off the stage, Tom felt a profound shift within. The kind of fulfillment that comes when ambition meets action, when insecurities are intertwined with triumph. He had not only reclaimed his passion for storytelling, but also cemented his role as a guide for others navigating their respective paths. Determined to continue fostering creativity and authenticity, Tom initiated regular storytelling sessions, breaking down barriers while inviting voices from all walks of life. It was this structure, this network of support, that birthed a community he had yearned for. As he stood amidst newfound friends and storytellers, a sense of pride washed over him, a deep-seated acknowledgement of all he had achieved through both struggle and dedication. He had transformed from a man shrouded in grief into a beacon of hope, a mentor, a creator, and a father who was not only present but thriving. Behind the pillars of joy and connection lay the unyielding weight of his journey, a constant reminder that resilience often emerges in the wake of sorrow. Tom had come to realize that he was not solely defined by his past, but sculpted by his choices moving forward. He stepped boldly into the future, where life awaited, abundant with untold stories yearning to be shared. This was more than a mere metamorphosis. It was the awakening of a man now wielding his narrative, empowering others to do the same. With renewed purpose surging through him, Tom glanced at Ryan, drawing upon the camaraderie they had nurtured. This was a new chapter, a celebration of authenticity, and a commitment to not waiting for change, but actively becoming it. The journey had just begun. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It really makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.